Welcome to the first in a series of orientation videos for the Chappelle roster of Jewish service in the American Civil War. I'm Adrienne DeArmas, the director of the Chappelle roster. Today, I'm going to give you a brief overview about this new resource, the organization behind it, and answer a few frequently asked questions. For those of you not familiar with the organization behind our project, the Shapell Manuscript Foundation is a nonprofit, independent educational organization dedicated to research and the collection of historical documents and original manuscripts. The foundation focuses on the histories of the United States and the Holy Land, with an emphasis on the people and events of the 19th and 20th centuries. In addition to collecting manuscripts, which can be viewed on our website, the foundation produces books, exhibitions, and videos, some of which are pictured here. So what is the Chappell roster? In short, the Chappell roster of Jewish service in the American Civil War is an ongoing reappraisal of the military service of Jews in the Civil War. Our goal is to identify every Jewish soldier who served in the Civil War. Our process is to find primary source proof of both military service and Judaism for each name in Simon Wolfe's The American Jew as Patriot, Soldier, and Citizen, and the numerous names he omitted. Our purpose is to change the conversation from how many to a more personalized and in-depth story of Jewish participation in an extraordinary period in American history. The result is a free to the public online database and published content drawn from the data. The database contains more than 50 searchable fields of data, nearly 10,000 soldier records, a bibliography of more than 2,500 primary and secondary sources, and more than 50,000 historical documents. The goal of the Chappell roster has never wavered since its inception in 2009, but the process, purpose, and result have evolved in response to the wealth of information we continue to discover. Before I delve into our methodology, allow me to address a few frequently asked questions. Who was Simon Wolfe? Bavarian-born Simon Wolfe immigrated to America at age 12 and eventually made his way to Washington, D.C., where he was known as a prominent Jewish lawyer, author, and philanthropist. In response to a growing wave of general anti-Semitism and published allegations that Jews were not willing to fight for their country, Simon Wolfe wrote a book called The American Jew as Patriot, Soldier, and Citizen, which was published in 1895. This comprehensive tome has been widely regarded as the standard bearer on the topic of 18th and 19th century Jewish American military history until now. Previously, the general consensus among Jewish historians was that if not every name in Wolfe's roster was Jewish, that number was so small as to not be noteworthy. And so the Chappell roster's initial scope of work was limited to verifying service for the names in Wolfe's roster and adding any soldiers he omitted. To date, we've determined nearly 1,000 and counting of the names in his book as not Jewish, which is not surprising when you consider that name profiling was an accepted research methodology in the 19th and early 20th centuries. However, to achieve our mandate for historical accuracy, the Chappell roster needed to evolve. How is the Chappell roster different from Wolfe's Civil War roster? Expanding the project scope to collect primary and/or secondary as required sources as documented proof of both military service and Judaism resulted in the creation of a flexible, powerful database and a shift in focus that more accurately reflects the Chappell Manuscript Foundation's mission of making historical documents and the evidence of human vulnerability they contain more accessible to the public. Eligibility requirements for new additions to the Chappell roster are, number one, verifiable military service in a federally or state recognized regiment, militia, or Home Guard unit in the Union or Confederate Army or Navy from April 12th, 1861 to April 9th, 1865. And secondly, substantiated evidence of Judaism. Once both are acquired, we collect the following data for each soldier and sailor if available: date and location for birth and death, marriage, residence, and occupation details, the connections, if any, between him and other individuals in the database, historical documents that provide insight into his life before, during, and after the war. Additionally, since not every name in Wolfe was Jewish or did serve, each record has a Jewish status and a service status, and I'll explain more about that in detail shortly. What about the Confederacy? As you might imagine, it takes time to find the soldiers and sailors in the historical record, collect the documents, and populate each soldier page with the data we find. Given the results of the Civil War, you might not be surprised to learn that finding military records for all the Jewish Confederates is sometimes challenging. And to say that Wolfe missed more Confederates than Union men is an understatement. 12% of the Union soldiers and sailors in the Chappelle roster are names we've discovered, while to date, 31% of the total number of Confederates we're working on were not in Wolfe's roster. So we ask for your patience while we ready the Confederate records for you and suggest you sign up for the Chappelle Manuscript Foundation's newsletter for future announcements about updates to the Chappelle roster. To account for the Wolfe names in the Chappelle roster, we have 4 service statuses and 3 Jewish statuses. Service confirmed is self-explanatory. Did not serve and to be determined statuses are reserved for Wolfe names only. Inferred service allows us to include soldiers and sailors whose official service records are not extant, like so many of the Confederates. The Jewish statuses are also self-explanatory with not Jewish and TBD only for Wolfe names, but what might not be is how we determine who is Jewish. Finding documentation that proves a soldier or sailor was Jewish is a much more dynamic endeavor than confirming military service. The evidence we collect reflects the broad inclusiveness of the Chappelle roster as outlined in the following categories. Genealogical proof. A soldier is Jewish by matrilineal or patrilineal descent, even if one or more in the family tree converted to another faith. An example of this is a soldier who is found on the genealogy charts in Malcolm Stern's First American Jewish Families, or a soldier's parents were found buried in a Jewish cemetery. Self-identification. A soldier is identified as Jewish by his own words or actions, either privately or publicly. Example, the soldier responds to a question on his pension application asking for details about his marriage by explaining that he was married by a rabbi. And lastly, testament by his contemporaries. A soldier is identified as Jewish by anyone other than himself. An example of this would be in a published narrative drawn from a Civil War soldier's personal diary. We read the following, quote, Jack Shepard's real name was Victor Ahrens. He was a full-blooded Jew. At 11 years of age, he had shipped as a common sailor and had led a life of adventure until he enlisted with us in the summer of 1861. Any documentary evidence which supports our claim that a soldier or sailor was Jewish will always be available on his page. So that's all I have for you today. To learn more about how to get the most out of the Chappelle roster, be sure to check out the other orientation videos in this series. Before I go, I want to thank you for your interest in the Chappelle roster. We are so excited to share our research with you and hope that if you have ancestors who served in the Civil War or you have any questions or comments, you'll reach out to us. And if you want to get involved, please let us know. Thanks for watching.